InvestaFest 2022 is brought to you by these major partners: Atram, To Trade Asia, and these other partners. Do not forget to share your experience and learning on social media. Use our official hashtag InvestaFest 2022.
Atty. Lee is a frequent keynote speaker and resource person and has been interviewed on CNN, DZMM, ANC, ABS-CBN, GMA, and other media channels. He has also spoken in international events organized in South Africa, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Spain, as well as conferences organized by international organizations such as the Asian Development Bank, the OECD, and the Global Reporting Initiative. So without further ado, our keynote speaker for the InvestaFest 2022, Atty. Kelvin Lee.
Hi, I'm Commissioner Kelvin Lester Lee from the Securities and Exchange Commission. On behalf of the SEC, Chairperson Emilio Aquino, and my fellow commissioners, we would like to wish all of you a wonderful day. Before anything else, allow me to thank Investagrams and the organizers of InvestaFest 2022 for, giving me the honor to speak before you today. I applaud them for coming up with this series of talks to educate the investing public. Today, I'm going to speak to you about the SEC, what we do, and how we protect investors. Now, before I begin my presentation this morning, please be informed that the views and opinions that are expressed here now are my own, do not necessarily reflect those of the Commission, the other commissioners, or the other staff members. This disclaimer allows me to be more candid with you today. Now, let's start with our very own Securities and Exchange Commission, or SEC. What is the SEC's mandate? The SEC is the national government regulatory agency charged with supervision over the corporate sector, the capital market participants, the securities and investments instruments market, and the protection of the investing public. The Commission was created through what was then the Securities Act. The Commission was tasked to regulate the sale and registration of securities, exchanges, brokers, dealers, and salesmen. Subsequent laws were enacted to encourage investments and more active public participation in the affairs of private corporations and enterprises, and of course to broaden the Commission's mandates. Recently enacted laws gave greater focus on the Commission's role to develop and regulate the corporate and capital market towards good corporate governance, protection of investors, the widest participation of ownership, and democratization of wealth. Currently, there are several laws that we are tasked to enforce, but for the purposes of this particular talk, I'll just highlight the more notable ones. For instance, Republic Act No. 11232, or the Revised Corporation Code, which aims for a more competitive corporate sector, adopts international best practices and standards tailored to address the needs and realities of the Philippine corporate setting. And it introduces new concepts and mechanisms to help the Philippines keep up with the changing times. Now, it is this law that gives the SEC the authority to be the registrar and overseer of the Philippine corporate sector, which is why if you wish to register a corporation, we are the first agency you go to. We also have Republic Act No. 8799, or the Securities Regulation Code, also known as the SRC for short. It aims to establish a socially conscious, free market, encourage the widest participation of ownership and enterprises, enhance the democratization of wealth, promote the development of the capital market, protect investors, ensure full and fair disclosure about securities, and minimize, if not totally eliminate, fraudulent or manipulative devices and practices which create distortions in the free market. It is this law that is violated when we speak of investment scams, insider trading, and other manipulations of the market. Now, since we are the primary agency that champions investor protection, let's talk about how you can avoid being victimized by scams. Sadly, Filipinos are very vulnerable to investment scams. We have heard lots of stories in the news about people getting scammed out of their hard-earned money. And what is the first thing that you should do if you hear of opportunities for investment and you're interested to invest? For example, you heard from your neighbor that there's this person or organization. He knows where if you invest a certain amount of money, they promise to give a regular percentage of return from the money you invested. The first thing you do and we always say this at the SEC, is that you always check first with us before entertaining any investment opportunity, especially when the terms are too good to be true. Check if the issuer and the investment is registered with us at the SEC. In short, check with SEC. These investments are usually required to be registered with us because per the Securities Regulation Code, as a general rule, securities shall not be sold, offered for sale, or distribution within the Philippines without a registration statement duly filed with and approved by the SEC. Which leads us to the question, what is a security anyway? According to the SRC, the Securities Regulation Code, and this is a long definition, securities are shares, participation, or interest in a corporation or in a commercial enterprise or profit-making venture, evidenced by a certificate, contract, instruments, whether written or electronic in character. This is usually in the form of shares of stock, bonds, investment contracts, and derivatives. Now, in order to determine whether a transaction or investment qualifies as a security, which requires registration, the Supreme Court of the Philippines, in the case of Power Homes, has stated that an investment contract, which is a form of security, is defined as a contract, transaction, or scheme whereby a person invests money in a common enterprise and is led to expect profits from the efforts of others. Hence, there are four things to look out for: the investment of money, a common enterprise, expectation of profit, and results from the efforts of others. All four elements must be present, and this is known as the Howey test. Now, to apply this test, we can use the infamous CAPA investment scheme, or investment scam actually, as an example. First, investment of money. In CAPA scheme, the money invested is the so-called donation, worth at least 10,000 pesos as a minimum. Second element, in a common enterprise. The common enterprise was CAPA Community Ministry International, previously registered as a religious corporation. Third, there was the expectation of profit. The member donor, the one who donated 10,000 or more, expects a blessing equivalent to 30% of the amount donated every month for life, which obviously is too good to be true. And fourth, primarily from the efforts of others. The member donor does not need to do anything other than invest and wait for the day of the monthly payout. In this case, all the elements of an investment contract are present in CAPA scheme. Now, CAPA, as already seen in the news, has proven itself not to be just an investment scheme, but an investment scam. It had no license for the SEC to solicit investments. It never filed a registration statement with us. And in fact, it even claimed wrongly that since they are a religious corporation and were only receiving donations, the SEC did not supposedly have jurisdiction. Thus, we were forced to issue advisories and later on cease and desist orders against it, and even revocation orders. No less than the President of the Philippines ordered law enforcers to look into the operations of CAPA and to ensure that the masterminds were prosecuted. So bottom line, if the transaction passes the Howey test, then the investment should be registered with us at the SEC. If not, or they can't show any such registration, there's already a red flag. So please, stay away from these scammers. But you may ask, why are securities required to be registered in the first place? With this, we go back to the Securities Regulation Code, or SRC state policy, which is to protect investors, ensure full and fair disclosure about securities, and to minimize, if not totally and fully eliminate, manipulative practices to distort the market. When securities are registered with us at the SEC, investors are protected because we require the regular disclosure of material information to reduce information asymmetry. Abusive practices are also penalized under the SRC, such as insider trading and fraudulent and manipulative transactions. Now, another popular form of investment scheme which we face at the SEC is the Ponzi scheme. This was named after Charles Ponzi, who duped thousands of New England residents into investing in a postage stamp speculation scheme back in the 1920s. So this has a long history. A Ponzi scheme is an investment fraud that involves the payment of purported returns to existing investors from funds contributed by new investors. Here, Ponzi scheme organizers often solicit new investors by promising to invest funds in opportunities claimed to generate high returns with little or no risks. Ponzi schemes have little or no legitimate earnings, and thus they require a consistent flow of money from new investors in order to continue. When it becomes difficult to recruit new investors, or when a large number of investors ask to cash out, the Ponzi scheme collapses as the inflow of funds is not enough to support the promised return to the investors. There are examples all over the world of even countries that almost fell apart because of Ponzi schemes. In an article by the Anti-Corruption and Governance website, Albania experienced the pains of Ponzi schemes at its height in November 1996, when a series of Albanian Ponzi schemes held money equal to almost half the country's total GDP. The schemes were fronted by a series of companies and charitable foundations that sprung up in newly capitalist Albania, and they offered monthly interest rates on deposits. Over half of the population of Albania rushed to invest in these schemes, some of which promised to triple an investor's money in 3 months. Obviously, once again, too good to be true. In Zimbabwe, there was also a similar situation where Ponzi schemes almost destroyed 2 decades worth of imprudent monetary policy, essentially destroying its economy, and it fueled rampant inflation, decimating the savings of its people twice. There was hyperinflation, as much as 500 billion% in 2008, which made savings worthless and led to the abolition of the local currency in favor of the dollar the following year. So you can see that Ponzi schemes have had a very, very dangerous, difficult effect all throughout the world, precisely why we are working against it. Now, if someone approaches you and offers you an investment, it's advised that to check for the following red flags. First, high investment returns with little or no risk. Every investment carries some degree of risk. An investment that offers higher returns typically has higher risks. So it's important for you to be suspicious of any guaranteed investment opportunity. When you invest in legitimate investments, the person offering you that investment will explicitly and specifically tell you that returns are not guaranteed and you might lose money. Scammers typically do not say so. Scammers typically say they're going to guarantee that you get a particular return every month. Secondly, overly consistent high returns. Investment values tend to go up and down over time, especially those offering potentially high returns. So be cautious if you are presented with an investment that continues to generate regular positive returns regardless of the overall market conditions. Another red flag is that if it is an unregistered investment product. Ponzi schemes typically involve investments that have not been registered with the SEC or with other regulators. So registration is important because it provides investors with access to key information about the company's management, products, services, and finances. Regulators will also check the viability of the business plan, for example, to check if it is financially viable. Another red flag is unlicensed sellers. Our securities laws require investment professionals and their firms to be licensed or registered. Most Ponzi schemes or other investment scams involve unlicensed individuals, unregistered firms. Another red flag is secretive, supposedly secret, or complex strategies. So you have to avoid investments that you cannot understand or cannot get complete information or details about how that investment works. In relation to this, there has actually been a trend of scammers soliciting investments now in the Philippines in the guise of supposedly investing them in cryptocurrencies or forex trading. But these investments are highly volatile, and while they certainly can be profitable, they are also very risky. Another red flag would be issues with paperwork. Avoid investments that have issues and inconsistencies in both the contracts and financial statements, as this may be a sign that the funds are not invested as promised. Another red flag is the difficulty receiving payments. Be suspicious if you do not receive payments or have difficulty cashing out your investment. Keep in mind that Ponzi scheme promoters routinely encourage participants to roll over their investments. Another red flag would be the pressure to buy right now. Scammers will pressure you or rush you into buying an investment before you even have the chance to investigate that particular investment opportunity. Be especially skeptical of investments that are pitched as once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. So, Let me share with you a summary of a list of questions that you should ask yourself when you're faced with an investment opportunity. You should ask yourself, and you should check, is the seller licensed? Is the investment registered? How do the risks compare with the potential rewards? Do I understand the investment? And where can I turn to for help? With all these in mind, if you still have doubts, you can always check with SEC. You may see a list of registered issuers and investments in our official website at www.sec.gov.ph. You can also download and install our recently launched SEC Check app, now available in both Android and Apple. It provides stakeholders, the general public, with easier access to the latest updates, notices, and other issuances for the SEC. With the click of a button, you can also either report suspicious investment schemes or check with SEC before accepting investment offers. You can also call or email our Enforcement and Investor Protection Department, also known as the EIPD, for clarifications over the filing of complaints. You can reach them at 8818-6047 or 8818-6337. You can also email them at epd@sec.gov.ph. Now, the SEC has also come out with do's and don'ts for investors. Let me just share that with you, just to make sure that we can try and keep you safe. These are the do's and don'ts. Be wary of unexpected telephone calls, letters, or even personal visits from people who offer quick profit schemes that require your immediate investment. Be suspicious of inside information, hot tips, or rumors that supposedly will give you a big advantage over other less knowledgeable investors. Turn down money requests accompanied by high-pressure warnings like, tomorrow will be too late, positioning is important, or act now because there will be long waiting lists of others who want to take advantage of this golden opportunity. Be wary also of schemes that emphasize recruitment of members or downlines, particularly if the product being offered is overpriced for what it's worth, as the same may be a disguised pyramiding scheme. Do not engage also in foreign currency trading unless you fully understand the mechanics or dangers of currency trading and can afford to lose your money. Once again, I emphasize this, there is no such thing as a guaranteed return in currency trading or any kind of investment contract or scheme. You should also ask for a prospectus, offering circular, financial statement, or other similar document before you even consider investing. Then read the small print or the fine print carefully, particularly on refund, and make sure you understand the terms thoroughly before signing any kind of a commitment. When in doubt, make no promises or commitment, no matter how tentative. Remember, and I emphasize this, if it sounds too good to be true, it usually is. It is far better to wait and lose an opportunity than to take the plunge and lose everything. Also, before committing, you should get an opinion from your lawyer, stockbroker, accountant, or the appropriate government office. You should also always demand official receipts in the name of the corporation or entities you are dealing with. And you should note that a primary SEC registration only grants juridical personality. It does not automatically give a company the authority to engage in all types of business activities such as lending, selling of securities, investment contracts, investment taking, and other such things. So to confirm what the company or individual is properly licensed to conduct the business in question and has no history of violating the law, I emphasize the point, get in touch with the SEC. I cannot emphasize this last point enough. There are a lot of businesses that claim to be authorized to solicit investments by showing they are SEC regulated, by showing their initial certificate of incorporation. That is only the primary registration, only the first step. All corporations have this, but not all corporations are authorized to solicit investments. For that purpose, a secondary registration is required, one that specifically states that they're authorized to solicit investments. In fact, if you look at the Articles of Incorporation closely, you will see there in the recent Articles of Incorporation that we have just approved, the template, that these corporations are explicitly not allowed to solicit investments in other activities which require that secondary registration, unless, of course, that necessary secondary registration is obtained. Now let's move on and address the big elephant in the room. What about cryptocurrency? Bear in mind that all these reminders on investment scams apply to cryptocurrency as well. Okay? I'm not saying that cryptocurrencies are scams, but the cryptocurrency world is not immune from scams. Just recently, there was that Squid Game cryptocurrency rug pull where scammers cashed in more than $3 million, leaving investors in the air. Regarding cryptocurrency, I would like to reiterate the advisory that the SEC made last year. When dealing with non-registered foreign entities, organizations, and corporations, we remind you to be vigilant and to do your due diligence prior to transacting or dealing with any entity. To err on the side of caution, we advise you to avoid transacting with corporations or entities without any registration or licenses to do business in the Philippines in order to avoid losing your earnings. If an entity or an activity is unlicensed or unregistered and is based abroad, you run the risk of not getting your money back once these are transmitted outside of the Philippines. Dealing or transacting with SEC-registered corporations assures parties that they are duly protected by Philippine laws here. In case of any future conflict with the corporation or entity arising out of that breach of contractual obligations, or in case of any fraud or misconduct committed by that registered foreign party which leads to criminal prosecution, parties may avail of remedies under Philippine laws by filing their claims or complaints with our local courts, having jurisdiction over the same. If you put your investment earnings in a platform which is accessible in the Philippines, but is operated by non-registered corporations or entities, the government can offer very limited protection, or in some cases, no protection from any harm, damage, fraud, or any form of misconduct which may be caused or committed by these corporations or entities. Now, I'd like to mention that as part of our mandate, we sustain investor confidence and protection by intensifying our enforcement actions against investment scams and securities regulations code violations. As of December 31, 2021, 375 individuals are being actively prosecuted before the regional trial courts, charged in 56 cases with violations of the Securities Regulation Code and 3 cases for violations of the Cybercrime Prevention Act of 2012. We also regularly warn the public of fraudulent investment schemes. The number of our warnings through advisories in the terms of the number of advisories issued to the public has increased from 50 in 2019 to 126 in 2020 and then adjusted to around 115 in 2021. These advisories are available at our official website www.sec.gov.ph and at our official Facebook page, obviously facebook.com/PhilippineSEC. On July 23, 2021, 5 scammers involved with AgriWealth Farm Venture Inc., believed to have milked millions of pesos from their victims, were arrested in a joint entrapment operation launched by the National Bureau of Investigation and the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Anti-Red Tape Authority in Quezon City. Another recent update is that in a decision by the Regional Trial Court of Pasig City, dated May 7, 2021, the Regional Trial Court convicted Yap of Solar Securities Inc. and held him guilty beyond reasonable doubt of violation of the Securities Act for manipulation of security prices. The RTC ordered 14 years of imprisonment and payment of fine amounting to 1 million pesos. A warrant of arrest was likewise issued against Yap. Now, as a brief background, that case stemmed from the complaint filed by the SEC regarding transactions involving Best World Resources Corporation and their shares, which were covering the trading period from October 1998 to October 1999. We have also been aggressively going after erring online lenders, as the SEC is also the regulatory agency tasked to regulate lending and financing companies. With the onset of the pandemic and a lot of Filipinos resorting to online lending platforms or OLPs for their financing needs, we have received a significantly higher number of complaints against these lenders during the pandemic. Now, take note that a number of them do not possess the necessary certificate of authority to operate as a lending and financing company. A large number of them also employ abusive collection practices, and they violate the privacy of security of borrowers. So, as a result, the SEC has been active in relation to these, and since May 23, 2017 up to the present day, we have revoked 36 certificates of authority of these companies, suspended 3, issued multiple cease and desist orders to around 72 of them, and we have revoked the primary registration of 2,117 lending companies. We have also issued Memorandum Circular Number 10, Series of 2021, which imposed a moratorium on the registration of new online lending platforms of lending and financing company. That moratorium was a response by the Commission to the numerous complaints relating to violations or alleged violations by online lending platforms of existing regulations. If you know anyone who has been abused by online lenders, or if you have a complaint, please feel free to once again go to the SEC website at www.sec.gov.ph, check for the lending companies and financing companies section, and then follow the instructions that are stated in the link. Now, let me discuss some of the more positive aspects. Let's go with a more positive side of my talk. Let me discuss a few recent developments in our capital markets. I'd like to share with you that our capital markets have been doing quite well despite the pandemic. The amount of securities registered significantly increased. In fact, it is practically unprecedented. From 2017 to 2019, the SEC registered an average amount of 161 billion pesos worth of securities annually. In 2020, the figure sharply increased by almost 300% to 538 billion pesos. In 2021, this was 472 billion pesos worth of securities that were registered. The size of our capital markets also increased in 2021 versus 2020. The equity market capitalization relative to GDP increased to 97.69% in 2021 from 88.39% in 2020. And the size of the local currency bond market relative to GDP increased to 50.48% in 2021 from 48% in 2020. The SEC also paved the way for new and innovative investment products and platforms to accelerate the shift to sustainable and inclusive finance. As of December 2021, of the US $20.45 billion worth of ASEAN-labeled green, social, and sustainability bonds issued as of December 31, 2021, $4.76 billion US dollars, or 20% of that number, were issued by Philippine companies. We're also happy, of course, with the revision of our REIT rules. They have been very well received by the market. REITs are our real estate investment trusts. We now have several REITs that have been doing very well in the market despite the choppy conditions. Just recently, we've had a recent addition to our list of REITs in the form of Citicorp Energy REIT Corporation, or CREIT. We have also approved several major IPOs during the pandemic, including the largest one to date in Philippine history in 2020 through the Monde Nissin Company with an offer size of 48.6 billion pesos. All these activities in our capital markets reflect the strong confidence of investors in the company's economic recovery, and I am confident that this will remain even in the coming years. Now let me talk about our digital initiatives. For those of you who have transactions with the SEC who wish to register a corporation, I'd like to let you know that we have been aggressively implementing technology modernization at the Commission for the benefit of our stakeholders. We now have the electronic simplified processing of applications for registration of companies. Heck of a word, no? But it's eSpark. It is a facility for faster and easier registration of corporations. The eSpark is further reinforced by its subsystem, the one-day submission and electronic registration of companies, or OneSec. Through OneSec, the process of incorporation can be completed in a matter of minutes. During the COVID-19 pandemic and since the latter part of 2020 and through 2021, the SEC has already been processing company registrations back to pre-pandemic levels, which is around 2,000 plus registrations per month. For 2021 alone, we have processed over 26,000 registrations, so meaning 26,000 new companies. We expect to be able to process even a higher volume as we automate and streamline the processes further. But the sheer number of these companies incorporating, even during a pandemic, shows you how much interest and optimism there is in the Philippine economy. Another of our digital initiatives would be the electronic system for payments to the SEC, or ePaySec. We allow online payment of registration and other transaction fees, as well as penalties, using debit and credit cards, digital wallets, and other cashless payment options. We also have the electronic filing and submission tool, or eFAS, which is an online facility for submitting the audited financial statements, AFS, or the General Information Sheet, GIS, and other reportorial requirements to the SEC online. So you don't have to physically go to any SEC office anymore. We have likewise strengthened our investor protection initiatives through the SEC Campaign Network, which is the overarching investor education program of the Commission. With the launch of the SEC Campaign Network webinar series, the Commission is now able to reach millions of Filipino investors. In 2021, we had a whole series of webinars with the subject of securing the Philippine capital markets, and the business sector. We also celebrated World Investor Protection Week and conducted a series of webinars on that topic. For upcoming webinars, by the way, please keep tabs on our official web page and our Facebook page for more information. We also have Seconomics, which is available at our website. Seconomics is a monthly publication by our Economic Research and Training Department that discusses new developments in the Philippine economy. You may find the content useful, especially for investors who want to see the economic outlook of the country. And that's pretty much it. That pretty much ends my talk. I hope you all learned something from me today. I wish you all a safe and prosperous financial journey. For more information and updates from the SEC, once again, you may check the official website of the Commission at www.sec.gov.ph or our official Facebook page at the fb.com/PhilippineSec. On behalf of the Securities and Exchange Commission, thank you and have a blessed day.
InvestaFest 2022 is brought to you by these major partners: Atram, To Trade Asia, and these other partners. Do not forget to share your experience and learning on social media. Use our official hashtag InvestaFest 2022.